Now, one of the very best things about Stellar Blade has to be its combat system. Honestly, it's one of the best I've seen in quite some time, and it makes you feel truly powerful once you start to master the basics. Within this video, I'll be showing you everything you need to know about combat, how to get the upper hand on those enemies, how to take down the toughest foes, and a few tips and tricks that help you along your way in order to master the game. Now, one of the first things we're going to be going over is going to be your beta skills. These are going to be your bread and butter for doing a lot of damage, and a little bit later on you will be able to get two other trees that you unlock, one of which will be the burst skills. But the beta skills are going to be for your early game, so it's definitely worth knowing what you're doing with these. And that's going to be your triplet, which I would say is actually a very underrated skill, because even though it's unlocked from the start, it gives you the only available chance to do some balance damage to your enemies. So this makes it incredibly powerful in certain situations, especially on those bosses when you want to kind of stagger them and take down their balance bar. Highly recommended to upgrade this early in order to tackle some of the more elite and boss enemies and knock down their balance bar fast. Over to our second beta skill, and this one's going to be Slash. Slash is your full-on multi-target. You want to take down several enemies at once, you charge it up, you do a high amount of damage, but honestly it's even better than that. I found after a lot of playtesting, this is probably the highest damage beta skill in the game, although Shield Breaker is almost neck and neck with it. It does a nice amount of shield break, but also does a massive amount of damage within its second strike, which in fact makes it definitely not one to overlook, even when you're doing single target damage. Over to Shockwave, and this is going to be an absolutely ideal one if you're trying to take down enemies from a bit of distance, or if you're trying to preempt a little attack on them. Because this is your only range beta skill, it makes it perfect if you're trying to tackle enemies without them knowing you're there, or you're just trying to take things out at a bit of distance. Easily one of the coolest looking beta skills, and one of the easiest to put into practice for taking down enemies fast without them knowing you're actually even there. Now lastly, and we're going to be going over Shield Breaker. Shield Breaker does exactly as it sounds, it breaks enemies' shields, but it does even more than that because it does a nice amount of damage with it, as well as doing some knockdown. If you've got a shielded enemy that you absolutely want to take out, or if you want to go from this into another move, that can mean that you take off a lot of enemy shields, allowing them to take significant damage from anything that you choose to use afterwards. Again, making this an ideal beta skill to use in a lot of situations. Now jumping over to your skill tree quickly, anytime you see any of these bees within the skill tree, try to pick them up if you've got enough points, because this is going to help you to generate your beta energy, allowing you to pull off those moves a lot more frequent and do some great damage as you're playing. Now next up, it's great being able to pull off moves, but what exactly do all your skill bars mean, what's going on with your character and what's going on with the enemy? So like I said, a little bit later on you will have a bar above this which will be for your burst skills, but at the start your first one's going to be this one right here, and that's going to be your beta energy. This is required in order for you to pull off skills or do additional effects at the end of combos and things in order to get a little bit of extra damage. You'll be able to build this up by parry, perfect parry, and by hitting your enemies, which in turn will allow you to generate your special moves. Underneath this, nice and easy, this is going to be your health pool. The more you've got of this, the higher your health, allowing you to take more hits, and you'll enhance this as you play through the game and pick up certain items that allow you to upgrade it in your camps. Lastly, and we've got your shields. Shields are what helps you to negate your damage. The higher your shield is, the more damage you're going to be able to negate, and this goes down when you're getting hit, and a little bit when you're getting hit whilst you've got your guard up as well. Now you're going to want to pay attention, because you'll know when your shield's broken, because it will sound like glass shattering, and at that stage that's when you'll be most susceptible to taking the highest damage. Over to your enemies, and every single thing we've just said works exactly the same for them. However, they have got one additional bar, and that's going to be just underneath everything else. You're going to see these yellow dots just here, and this is going to be their balance bar. Taking them down allows you to go into a kind of fatal strike, which will take out most standard or elite enemies and also do a massive amount of damage to those bosses. This can be depleted by perfect parries and by certain moves within your skill set. The main one at the moment from the start will be your triplet beta skill. Over to another thing that you'll have to get to grips with eventually, and that's going to be your parrying and blocking. I would definitely say, even if you can't parry, make sure you're blocking, as it's going to mitigate a lot of damage that you would have taken if you're just getting hit straight in the face. Block whenever possible, work out the enemy's moveset until you feel like you're ready to perfect parry. Perfect parrying is going to be ideal because it really does help you to dwindle down their balance bar and go into that ultimate strike, allowing you to pull off a lot of additional damage. You'll know every time you've perfect parried because the clash will result in a louder noise. It will show you a kind of yellow strike on the screen, and like I said earlier, it will help you to knock down the enemy's balance bar significantly. Over to the skill tree again, and this time we're in the survival one. Focus boost is going to be amazing for this. Try to pick this up as early as possible, as it's really going to help you to get your timing down and just make the game a little bit easier overall. Now another thing that you're going to want to know about is going to be your dodging. Dodging in Stellar Blade I found actually a little bit more difficult than in quite a few games. Honestly, it's not impossible by no means, but I found until I'd upgraded it, I was getting caught out in certain instances. So whenever possible, you're going to want to go into your skill tree, go to your survival again, and try to pick up double dodge in order to make your life just much easier and be able to evade enemies much faster. Being able to move twice really does help you out, and even if you don't get the perfect dodge, you'll usually find you're able to evade it in some way, shape or form, rather than getting caught out when you really feel like you shouldn't have been. Now over to your enemy attacks, and this is something you will 100% have to know. Obviously you're going to know there's normal standard attacks, whatever the moveset of your enemies is, but from there there's also quite a few others. 4 coloured ones in total. That's going to be your yellow, your red, your blue and your purple. All of which are indicated on the screen, but you'll definitely need to know what you're doing with them. Fighting against some of the bosses or some of the harder targets, if you don't get this down, you're going to really struggle, so you really need to learn them from the start. When an enemy has that yellow pop up on them, you're going to want to make sure that you either evade or move out of the way, or even, if you can, would be to go into one of your beta skill attacks. You may take a little bit of damage in the process, but this allows you to hit them, not get knocked down, and when they turn yellow in general, it just means you're not able to parry or block their attacks. Now on the other hand, when they turn red, like you're going to see just here in the training mode, you're going to want to be careful of them, as they're going to go savage, start to hit you over and over again, performing quite a variety of attacks on you, and at this stage you're going to either want to parry, perfect parry, or just block their attacks in order to negate most of their damage. Now within your skill tree you'll need to purchase these two right here. That's going to be your blink and your repulse, and both of these are going to be essential for taking down the next foes. So whenever you see an enemy blink blue, you're going to want to pay attention, as it means they're about to do a special strike on you, but the main thing you're going to want to focus on is going to be your sword. When you see it blink blue, then you're going to want to press up and circle on your controller in order to activate blink, get behind them and do a nice bit of damage. The purple version is very similar, but this is going to be repulse. This time, when you see them flash purple, you're going to press down plus circle. This is going to activate repulse, and you'll be able to kind of do a dodge backwards and very often open them to a lot of damage because they go into a kind of vulnerable state. Ideally after this, if you can, follow up with some range damage, as they'll be more susceptible to that at the time. Another thing not to forget is going to be your combos. Have a little look in your skill tree and you'll be able to work out which ones you like, which ones you think will be easier to pull off, which ones you think are best in certain situations, and then whenever you go into a battle, you'll be able to go in and make sure you're able to get the most out of your movesets. If you go back into your skill tree on the attack version, you're going to have the beta energy recharge, and just after that is going to be beta chain. This allows you to do a kind of stronger last hit on your combos, and it can really work in your favour if you're trying to dish out a lot of damage by performing a special strike at the end. This strike's going to turn red and it's going to be enhanced with damage a lot more so than any of your regular attacks. However, one thing to note, it does take a little bit of your beta energy, one block of it, so make sure you're prepared to use that, or you've got that at the time, in order to hit your enemies with a nice red attack and look awesome while you're doing it. Aerial blow is exactly like it sounds. This way you'll be able to perform a strike after you've jumped into the air, and you're going to land, do a nice bit of damage, and it also does a tiny bit of AoE, often able to hit a few enemies at once. I found this a bit tricky to pull off sometimes, and I must admit I definitely didn't use it the way I should have been at the start, because what I found is it's actually a lot easier if you're using this just to break the enemy's guard in order to pull off some hits afterwards. Ultimately this can be a great thing if you're trying to mix it in with a few of your combos, but it's not always something that's needed unless you find you need to break the enemy's guard in some sort of way. Over to ambush, and this is going to be the Metal Gear Solid version of the game. If you want to be sneaky, you want to get behind your enemies, and you want to take things out without them knowing you were even there in the first place, then this is the one for you. You're going to be able to perform a kind of backstab motion, take out the enemies in pretty much one hit, and sometimes just watching them on their patrol, walking away from you, then doing this can be a lot easier than taking things on and wasting a bit of energy when you don't need to. Over to rush and chain rush, and this is going to be your kind of initiator. If you want to jump into battle, this can make things a little bit easier, as you're going to fly in at a slight distance, allowing you to generate a little combo before you've even started one. This can actually work really efficiently, allowing you to get a bit of additional damage on enemies, but you will need to make sure that you've got this bar right here charged up, as that's going to show you your rush bar, and that's going to be on a short timer. So make sure you're paying attention to it, especially if you want to charge in and follow up with a chain rush afterwards. Right, hopefully that's pretty much covered all of the basics. There will be an advanced guide further on once I've got to grips with everything and I'm fully upgraded on Eve and such, but for now everything you've learnt should really help you to turn the tides of battle. You should be able to take on the biggest, baddest enemies, the bosses, the elites, and not have too much trouble. And remember, if you are getting stressed out or absolutely smashed to pieces, don't forget at any point you can farm some SP, make your life a little bit easier, upgrade your skills and such in order to make Eve stronger at any point in the game. But yeah, there'll be a lot more content on the way from me, as I am absolutely loving the game. As always, for all things gaming, take care, I'll see you on the next day.